Hi, everyone. Welcome to this stream. I'm the founder of Elk Academy, and I have with me Amanda, who is our corporate team lead and also communication specialist and communication team lead at Elk Academy. We work with a lot of tech and non-tech companies, helping them with global growth. And today we wanted to look at application for Y Combinator and give some feedback in terms of the language communication and just like some overall typical mistakes that people are making. We wanted to be useful both to this company. We are reviewing HubCloud, but also to everyone, because some of the things that we see are pretty typical, right, Amanda?
Yeah, so I mean, we're going to give some specific feedback, I think, for this actual application, but you can really apply this to kind of any person applying to Y Combinator. Specifically, I think when we're looking at like the Eastern European population and the way in which a lot of non-native English speakers are trying to write in English and explain their ideas, we're looking at some really repeat offenders here. So we'll be talking about those generalities and how we can really help them to be clearer and more concise with their language. So yeah, let me go ahead and I will share the screen. But before I actually kind of dive in, or I should say before we dive into the actual topic, I do just want to talk about some general problems that we have. So when we're looking at this kind of form, the one thing I notice is that people are trying to explain themselves in one of two ways. Either they're using incomplete sentences and getting into like the bare minimum and not sharing enough information, or they're doing the exact opposite, which Fedor and I always call the Tolstoy method, right? That classic idea of oversharing, but oversharing in a way that just kind of goes off and doesn't focus on actually answering the question. I think that's...
Not that we don't love Tolstoy. I love him dearly, but this is just different from the business culture and what is expected from you here in this specific format.
Right, exactly. And so, you know, it's just a different way of writing. And we're really trying to look at what Y Combinator specifically wants, and how you can best communicate your ideas to them. So let's just kind of scroll down a little bit here. So for example, when they talk about customers, right? So how many active customers do you have? And like, you know, you're trying to kind of get this idea of who is your target base? What is it that you are doing to go after these customers and to help support them, right? So if you're building hardware, how many units, right? They say things like this: every customer is valuable to us. That's such a platitude, guys. That doesn't really mean anything, right? That's like saying, I like to eat food, right? Of course I like to eat food, but what kind of food is my favorite? And how is it prepared? And how am I gonna make sure that it's the freshest, most delicious food possible, right? So if you have valuable customers, who are they? Who is your target audience? You cannot possibly be a startup and be thinking on a Coca-Cola scale, right? You're not selling Coca-Cola to the world. You have a target audience that you are approaching. And so all of your marketing, all of your resources need to go into that specific field, right? So saying every customer is valuable isn't saying anything at all.
Yeah, so, and I remember when Vanya Novikov from Silicon Pravda, the person who gave this application to us so that we review it from the point of view of language communication and just from your American head, he was saying that probably like this valuable customers, like the word valuable and the phrase itself confused them. What do you think when they ask this question? If you have some particularly valuable customers, who are they? Like, what is it that they want to hear? It's like we're saying definitely not that every customer is valuable to us. Yeah, this is like to them. This will probably be a red flag. They're like, oh, guys, come on.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, they start out okay, right? They're saying we've got most of our customers coming from Europe and we have some coming from the United States. Well, these guys are located in Los Angeles. I'm going to assume that they want to target their clientele towards the United States. So I'm guessing that those are going to be more valuable customers for them, right? Because if word of mouth is going to travel, it's going to travel within your circle. So we really kind of want to get into that idea, right? Y Combinator is trying to help your company grow. So I need to know what direction are you planning on going with this company, right? And are you looking at building up this customer base in Europe where you're already going pretty strong? And if so, what area of Europe? How are you going to be getting more and more active customers? And where are they coming from? What age group are we talking about? Are we talking about, you know, people who have a lot of money to spend? You know, are we talking about people that are young and hip and looking for new ideas? That's going to make a big difference in understanding the direction that your company's going.
So here they want specificity, definitely, yeah. And if you're saying that you have 65 customers, companies in total, just list the names of the companies and explain why you think, like, why would you want companies like that?
Yeah, right. So it doesn't even have to be that, but it could be about like the sector that company is, the size of that company, right? You know, how many users that company includes. Just give us the right details so that we can really imagine this, right? You're painting a picture here. So specificity, really, really important.
Yeah, makes sense. Mm-hmm.
All right, let's scroll down a little bit further. And look at some more stuff that we have here, right? So any time that you are bringing in brand new information, you need to make sure that you're explaining that information, right? So here, this is all about revenue, right? And growth rate. And so what they're saying here is that this is how we're doing with our business, but we've also launched an educational course, right? Which started accumulating profits 6 months ago. Okay. So that sounds now like your company is maybe moving in 2 different directions. You've got multiple products that you're offering or multiple sales. So you need to kind of, again, be specific about that. How much profit, and is that a shift for a reason, right? Was it because you weren't getting growth fast enough in this area? Was it a new idea? Is it in addition to, right? I'm trying to paint a picture. I'm trying to explain why my company has made the decisions that they have and where we're planning on going in the future with that. So if you're going to bring in the new idea, tell us why, right? Tell us how this is different. Tell us how it's going to benefit the main idea that you started with. Does that make sense, Fela?
Oh, yeah, totally. Absolutely. Of course. In the question about the numbers should be answered with the numbers. And that's your thing. You can't just say, oh, there's another product that is making money. What?
Exactly, right? So they're specifically asking about the revenue and growth rate, and you didn't put that in there. So that's going to be a red flag, right? That's going to be something that people are going to go, what? Come on, answer the question, right? Start with answering the question. I think that's the most important thing that you can take from this. Start with that and then fill in the details as you need, right? So if you're telling a story, then you want to make sure that you're giving the details that make the story better, not ones that veer off into different directions. Y Combinator is asking these questions because they know that these questions are the one that will give them the best insight into your project. They've been doing this for years. They know what questions have value, and that means that you have to answer that question, not go off on a tangent somewhere else, right? Stay away from Tolstoy.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
All right, so this is a classic problem that I think happens all the time in business writing, not just for these applications. So if you look at this question, they're asking about the idea, right? And the expertise in your area and how you're kind of giving people what it is that they need, right? So what happens is that people always start by saying, here is the problem, and then we have the solution, right? But they separate these two ideas and they don't put it together. So I had an amazing boss who used to tell me, Amanda, don't bring me problems, bring me options, right? And then I can make the decision as to what the best solution is to deal with it. So that means in the same breath that you're presenting the problem, you need to come up with that solution so that it's not just left hanging there, right? Their answer here, right, how they came up with this idea is that they worked in companies in the past, the company grew too fast, and they were unable to deal with the success because they lacked proper management and planning tools. So in that next sentence, you need to say, and that's how we came up with the idea, so that we could create proper management and planning tools so that other companies would not suffer this same issue. Mm. Right now, as an American, when I'm reading this, the only part that is hitting home is that you've dealt with a company before that wasn't successful because you couldn't handle proper management and planning tools.
It's not the best recommendation for yourself, huh?
You're really selling yourself short, right? You're not presenting yourself in its best light. So make sure when you're talking about the idea and how you worked on it, talk about not just the problem and the past, but talk about what you're doing now and how that solution is making a difference, right? Really, really important. We don't.
Yeah. So like the point, I guess, is that don't expect your reader to make conclusions for you and to make right assumptions. Do it for them. Take care of them in this way. They are reading a lot of applications, and they should not have to guess. They should see clear points, right?
Exactly, right? That's so important. So you're really trying to give them access into your framework and your thinking process, really. So right now you're like assuming that they completely understand what your project is and how it works, but they're looking at so many applications all the time. They don't have time to go research it for themselves, right? So it's the same, like if you were giving an email to someone that you wanted to contact, right? You would give them every single way to contact you back, right? So I'm available by email. Here's my LinkedIn. Here's my phone number, right? I don't want that other person to have to go somewhere else, look up my phone number before he can make the call, right? I want to make it as easy as him as possible to press that button, right? So the same is true for this. Give them all of the details that they need so that they can really understand, right? Specifics.
Yeah, and here I think that it's a really good idea to give like an exact, like a specific example of how lacking this product can affect the business. But you kind of made the first step and didn't make the second and the third and the fourth. So you can say like, hey, I had this problem myself. There was no such solution that resulted in A, B, C, D, E not working. And now our product make A, B, C, D, E, and F and G works this way because this is how we solved our problem. And just now, not just for ourselves, but also for all the companies that we work with. I think, right, that's would be, so it's like, it's a right direction, but it's just one step instead of like 4 steps. If you are making this step, make sure you're, like Amanda said, make sure you're bringing it home.
Exactly. That's a great way to say it. Make sure you're bringing it home. Right?
Yeah, I'm just repeating you.
So I think too, when we look at this, you know, do you have domain expertise in this area, right? So you're starting to answer this question because you're saying we understand our clients because we had the need that our clients now have, right? But that doesn't mean that I necessarily have the expertise to solve that problem, just that I had the same problem. Sure. So you're missing another opportunity to sell yourself here, right? To talk about your experience and what it is that you can bring to the table. So keep that in mind, right? That there's multiple parts to this question and you need to hit on all of that, right? So how do you know people need what you're making? Well, you know it because you needed it, right? So that part's answered, but you didn't completely sell them on the fact that you have the expertise to solve this problem. So keep that in mind, right? I know I can't play piano, but that doesn't mean I can teach myself to play piano, right? So somebody on the team has to have that expertise. Yeah. That's going to go back to that other question we had about their team, right? Let me see if I can find, where was that? So, oh, maybe it was down. Okay, so here we have a question. Please provide any other relevant information about the structure or the formation of the company. You need to describe how your company works, right? Who's on your team, what they do, what they're responsible for, right? And here, this is a little bit confusing because we have 6 people that are working full-time, and then we have 3 advisors. It doesn't say what they advise on. Instead, it just says where they're from. Knowing where they're from is maybe not the most important detail unless these people are from areas that we're targeting, right? So my understanding is that they're selling their product thus far in Europe and the United States. So why there's an advisor in Sydney, I don't know, and I don't know why I should care that that advisor is in Sydney. So that is a detail that is either not necessary or it's just confusing, right? Because it's not telling me anything about the structure and the formation of the company. So what I'm really curious is to what are these people's areas of expertise? How are they consulting and helping the company to come to light? And what is that going to mean going forward? Are these people going to eventually play a bigger role for the company? Or is this a one-time thing where they're just giving some advice and walking away? So really, I need to understand more about the structure of the team and each individual's role within that team.
True, yeah. And because the section is called equity, obviously, why I think it's also very useful to think, why are they asking these questions? These guys are taking a share in your company if they invest in you. So they need to understand the shares and how they will be distributed. And I don't see here the share distribution. Because that's the main reason why they're asking, where are you incorporated, and tell us about the shareholders, right?
That's exactly it, Fedor. That's why they're asking the question, right? And they're looking to find out who is all in, right? Who is committed to this project? And what are you giving to this project, right? So we're going to be giving you advice. We're going to be giving you some seed money, right? We at Y Combinator, which we're not part of, but I'm representing them in this, right? We're giving you this, and we are expecting a return on that. So we're assuming that these 6 employees and these 3 advisors are doing the same, right? They're giving something to their company and they're expecting a return. So we're looking at that breakdown. Who's giving what, and how important is that to the company moving forward specifically, right? So I want to kind of point out this American perspective, right? So America's a pretty young country. And the thing that I find really interesting about American business in general is that we only look to the history to know how that's leading us into the future, right? The future is much, much more important. I've noticed in my time working with Eastern Europeans that they think that history is important in and of itself. But from an American business perspective, that's really not what I'm looking at, right? I want to know how the team formed. I want to know what decisions have been made. But really, the reason why we're asking these questions is to know how you're going to make bigger, more important decisions going forward, right? It's very forward focused.
Yeah, I've been talking about Hamilton last week because I finally watched the Disney Plus version of the show. Yeah, and I think that's a really good metaphor for that. Yeah, it's a show about the U.S. history, but it's a show about the U.S. today, about the diversity, about the stories that haven't been told, and how it is important right now to include, the women and people of color into the narrative today. And we are showing this by telling the story about yesterday. Yeah, but it's not about yesterday per se. So same thing here.
Exactly, right? Immigrants, we get the job done.
Right. That's my favorite.
It's the best. And I think that's so true, right? Like that's really the way in which business is done. It's not so much that I care about your failures in the past. It's that I care that you learned something from that. So you're going to apply that to the future, right? You're going to make better decisions going forward. Failure is important in that aspect, especially as an entrepreneur. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to try out a lot of different things, but it's really about where you're going from that, right? What that failure has taught you. So keep that in mind as you're going through this whole process and filling things out. They're asking you these questions because they want to know what's next for you. They want to know your plan. They want to know how the company is going to grow and evolve, and what mistakes you've made along the way so that you can make better decisions going forward.
Yeah.
I want to point out really quickly that there was kind of a fun section in here that they ask about, which is all about your ideas.
Yeah.
And I thought that this was kind of a great response that they did. Right. So they just gave up some different ideas for other projects that they could possibly have. So feel free to be creative and be fun in that area. Where did it go? Like just other projects that you're not currently working on, but that you are, that just kind of shows your entrepreneur spirit and your ability to be creative. So maybe you'll eventually run with that idea, or maybe you won't. But this is really about you and the way you think and the way you plan the future. And it also just shows kind of how in touch you are with problems that are happening in the world. So please don't leave this section blank. Don't say that you're only focused on the one idea.
Yeah, we in our challenge, actually, that's the question in the application that I'm giving to Igor Mirson, to the our stand-up expert. Yeah, because I think that's a great opportunity to show that you're a human, that you're an interesting human, to show that you're, you can be funny here, unlike like what's the equity, they don't want you to be funny, they're like when you talk about the formation of your company. But here, I think specifically they ask this to see if there's anything else that you want to, share, if there's anything inspirational. So I think looking at it from this perspective, like also from a perspective of like fun, creative, is a good lens here.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is how they're getting to know you as an entrepreneur, as a founder. So it's quite important that we really understand like how you think and what you're creative about, what you care about, is also a pretty important thing. So these guys, they don't want to hear that you're going to save the world, but they kind of want to save the world themselves. So they're pretty excited to hear about the different things that you're doing, that you're contemplating on. So let's go back to this idea about, please tell us something surprising or amusing that one of you has discovered, right? Again, this is a lot about your personality. This is about sharing who you are and your way of thinking. Please, please make sure that every detail that you add has purpose, right? So they're asking you for something surprising. You have an entire sentence that says, it was very surprising from our perspective. That doesn't say anything, right? Why? What is interesting about this? Tell me why I should care, right? If you have something that you think is important enough to add to this, and you think that this is something that is radical or new or life-changing, then I need to know why I should think that it's just as life-changing, right? That's what they're looking for here. They're looking for some aha moment that they can go, wow, I hadn't thought about that before either. That's cool. What can we do with that? How can we make that work for us?
Yeah.
Right. So make sure that you're giving the details, the specifics that really add to the story, so that they can connect to you, so that your audience gets a great idea of how you think and how you grow the business.
Totally, yeah. I think empathy generally is a good, good lens and good filter. When you look at your own answers and reviewing them, you think about, they've been around for years. They probably are asking every question for a reason. What is the reason behind it, and what would be the most convenient, the best answer that they want to hear? It's either the shortest, the most clear, something surprising, and like Amanda saying, aha moment. Yeah, kind of just like think about what the other side is expecting from you, and give them that, and if possible, exceed their expectation in this.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's super important. I want to talk about a couple of basic English problems that I've noticed are happening over and over. Number one, you need to proofread your application, right? You need to proofread it. Your friend needs to proofread it. Probably your cousin needs to proofread it as well, right? Whoever you know that has the best English needs to get in there and double check what it is that you're saying and making sure that everything is written out correctly. But there's some things that you have in here that are not just about simple like grammar mistakes, but it's about tone of voice, and that's really important. So if you notice in this couple of paragraphs here, we have talking about one of our co-founders, then we've moved into an I've, and then we're back to our, right? That's really confusing. You need to make sure as you're writing that you're either writing from an I perspective, a personal singular perspective throughout the entire thing, or that you're writing from a we perspective as co-founders, right? It's really, really confusing. And here I don't even know who the I is, if it's still referring back to the one co-founder with his 15 years of experience or not, right? So be really careful about that. The subject needs to be consistent throughout the entire application.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So the other thing is I definitely think avoid passive voice, right? So passive voice by most American business standards is considered to be weak English, right? An active voice sounds stronger and sounds more to the point. Right. So here, for example, it says that these other companies are considered our future competitors. Do we consider them future competitors or not? Right? Who is considering them competitors? That's really vague and not helpful to what it is that you're saying.
Yeah, it feels like it's about taking charge and taking responsibility, yeah, like in the active voice versus just saying, you know, someone does something and you won't know who even is doing it because I put it in the passive voice, where like the definition of the passive voice is that the doer is absent. And we don't want, in the application that is short and concise, we don't want any doers that are absent. We want to face the doers and really understand what's like what they have in mind. So I think that's why. And even Grammarly, like guys, like the last thing you can do, I mean, the first thing that you can do is put it into Grammarly, and Grammarly will point to you and will say passive voice, passive voice, passive voice. It will tell you to correct it because it's like, this is so basic now, such a basic expectation.
It really is, right? And I mean, to be quite honest, like this is something that it's going to separate you as a non-native English speaker from these native English speakers, right? You have to remember that you're competing at the highest level right now. You're competing with a whole bunch of other guys that went to MIT, Harvard, Stanford, and they have great ideas too. And they're working in their native language. So for them to explain themselves is a lot easier. So it's definitely something to keep in mind that while no one expects your English to be perfect in life, that you need to definitely put in that extra effort to make this the best application possible, because this is really your best foot forward. Now, that being said, like diversity is exciting and we're super interested to get ideas from different places. So talk about that and you know, share the fact that you're already in different markets, that you have a different background than some of the other guys that are applying, because that in and of itself is interesting, but it's not an excuse for poor quality English.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and guys, like Fiverr, for example, yeah, they have, it's this wonderful service for freelance work, and there are native speakers that can review this, like the application. This would be, I don't know, like less than $100 for sure. And it's such a high stakes game, you know, you're only applying to Y Combinator, like 2 times a year, or maybe once in your lifetime. So I would say come on. Yeah, you definitely need to proofread by a native speaker. So yeah, you don't, on the paper, you don't look different as someone that is a native speaker and a graduate of a good university.
Exactly. Yeah. So just a couple of things to keep in mind while you're putting together your application. So there's a lot to think about. And these are important questions for you to answer as a founder, right? These are really things that you should really nail down and make sure that you have a neat, concise answer that really explains who you are and what you do.
Mm-hmm. Yep, sounds good. Amanda, is there anything else in the application that we wanted to look at? Like what's the month before is highlighted here? Like if you go down a little, yeah, this one.
Oh yeah, that's just word choice that I wouldn't go with. So they specifically ask over the last 6 months. So I would either put last month, May, or the previous month, the month before. Doesn't sound as official. So, and I would also keep that in mind that you want to be a little bit careful about your overall tone and your overall level of professionalism with this. So you'll notice in the application that they actually even have things like a contraction, right? We're interested. So it's fine for you to use contractions and to use kind of a less formal language. But that being said, this is still your business that you're representing. So I don't expect you to use slang or, casual terminology. And I think you need to be careful with like how you're referring to yourself, right? So if you're Jack, our CTO, that doesn't sound very official, right? So the first time you introduce him, he should be Jack Smith, our CTO and co-founder, right? And then you can go on through the story and say, Jack came up with the idea, right? But just be really careful about the level of professionalism with which you use your language. It's completely fine to use incomplete sentences like they do here, right? So for example, saying just the number and the month, that's not a complete sentence, obviously, and that's fine, right? Because it's getting to the point as long as you're completely answering the question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good.
So I think that's about all I've got.
Yeah.
Anything else you can think of, Taylor?
No, I think that's great. We'll keep doing this. I think with and if one refers more applications our way after he gives like a more businessy and like from the alumni point of view reviews, that we can also look at it from this perspective that we took today. Also, we are planning to like open up as much as we can our challenge. Yeah, and for example, today the guys were submitting the 1-minute videos. We start with that, and I think if we get if the guys allow us to take one of the videos and go through it and talk about what we see and what can be improved, I think this can also be really useful, helpful for the community. So, and if you want us to review your application, again, feel free to reach out to me and Amanda, and we'll be happy to be helpful.
Definitely. We love doing it, and we love being part of this like super creative, fun community. So we're learning a lot about all of these different companies and their ideas. And it's just been such a joy getting to help them share their stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Amanda, thank you so much for your time and for this. And I'll see you soon again. Let's see what the application at hand will be. I'm excited.
Sounds good. All right. Bye,
okay.
here.